I remember the exact second, moment, and day that I burnt out. It was a crisp winter afternoon, and I had spent the day rounding in the hospital. I was called that afternoon to see a patient, and I found myself at that very moment hunched under a desk in the ICU, pulling an electrical cord out from a computer in order to allow my patient to start dialysis. Now, some explanation for that comment is probably needed. You see, when I saw my patient, she had a potassium that was quite high, and the only therapy for her was acute dialysis. But when the dialysis nurse came with her portable dialysis system, we found that we lacked the power cord to connect the dialysis system to electricity. And thus, my patient's treatment would be delayed. She had an increased chance of having more adverse events, and I believed that the quality of health care that I was delivering was not great. Luckily, my problem-solving mind kicked in, and I realized that the cord that was needed was the exact size, shape, and configuration as a common cord found in a personal computer. And so I was able to pull the cord out of the computer and hand it to my nurse. And I took pride in that. I had solved the problem. I had solved yet one of those little problems that caused the quality of health care to be not great. But at that very moment, some part of my brain said, wait a minute, how broken must the system be that it takes me to do these sort of things in order to deliver the quality of care that my patients deserve? Followed immediately by, I can't do this forever, I'm done. And poof, in that second, in that moment, I burnt out. Now, I'm not proud of the fact that I burnt out, but that very moment was the spark that allowed me to create my intentional, iterative 5-year plan. And that plan has really allowed me to be successful in my career. I'd like to think has been able to improve the quality of lives for patients worldwide, and I think can be successful for you regardless in whatever discipline you're in. A bit of background. I come from a long line of healthcare professionals. My 2 sisters are physicians. My cousins are physicians. My nephews are physicians. My 2 children aspire to be physicians. As a result, I set the standard of care quite high. I believe that the quality of care that my patients should receive ought to be the same as my family members receive. But we know that's not the case. If healthcare was on Yelp as an entity, it might have a 1-star review. You would see comments like, well, the service is inconsistent, sometimes slow. I don't really know what I'm paying for. The costs are not very transparent. And the quality varies from time to time. And you'd be right. Yet, because I was so passionate about delivering a high standard of care, I set upon myself every day to do Herculean things in order to fix the system from within. Whether it was finding the right cord that day for the dialysis treatment, or putting in an electronic medical record system in my practice in the early 2000s. And by that I meant I actually ran the cables in the ceiling and dropped them down. I would do all of these things to try to fix the system. But I made a fatal flaw. My flaw was that I did not understand the limits of my sphere of influence. My ability to make the right diagnosis and prescribe the right treatment that afternoon, within my sphere of influence. My ability to make sure the hospital's electrical systems, dialysis systems were actually able to deliver that, 3 light years beyond my sphere of influence. And so I went home that day quite dejected. I thought to myself, there must be something else I can do. This system is broken and I need to fix it. And I thought to myself, you know, I've done a lot of training, but I think I need to do more. I think in order to fix this problem, I have to learn what we physicians might refer to as the dark arts, the administrative side of medicine, the business side of medicine, the information technology side of medicine, population health, all the essential building blocks that are required to build a healthcare system at scale that can consistently deliver high-quality care. And then I had a scary realization. In order to do that, I really had to be credible. And to be credible, This was not a part-time sport. I had to go do this full-time, and that was scary. At this point, I had been in clinical practice for about 5 years, and by all accounts, I was successful. My patients loved me, my colleagues loved me, the practice of medicine was intellectually stimulating and financially rewarding. It was great. Would I really leave all of that just to continue to improve the system? And obviously, you know the answer. The answer is yes. And that very decision was hugely instrumental in my success. And the crazier thing is I've actually repeated this 4 more times. Just as I've been really good in a career and people are like, dude, you're crushing it, I decide to leave and start anew and learn more and more and more. And as I mentioned, this, I think, is a paradigm that you could follow as well. So, as I thought about how to solve this problem, I said, you know, I've learned a lot over the years. I've been in a lot of different schools and training. There must be something I can learn from that history. And it turns out that was true. All of my education before was bucketed into little chunks, little episodes of training with a finite start and end, a defined curriculum, and they each built one upon each other. You guys all are familiar with this. Middle school prepared you for high school. High school prepared you for college. College perhaps prepared you for graduate school, and so on and so forth. And so that paradigm could be followed as well. And interestingly, in most of those previous episodes, I actually had to pay someone tuition to learn. But the epiphany that I had is if I was focused, if I was intentional, if I knew what I had to learn and how I could get those experiences, I could actually pick my next job and have someone pay me to learn and grow and continue to succeed. So let's get down to some basics of my plan. Step 1, really think about what you want to learn in the next bucket of time. Think about the skills you want to acquire, the experiences you want to have, the connections you want to make. Really, really important. Write those down. This becomes your curriculum. Step 2, time box that. Time boxing is a technique which allows you to say, I'm going to do a certain thing for a certain amount of time. Now, why is that important in this case? No different than a college freshman or a single-term president, time boxing forces the discipline of understanding how you need to get from point A to point B, and it forces you to be iterative. You have to figure out what are your goals in year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. Now, I need to be clear with you. The relationship between time point A and time point B is not linear. It is, in fact, curvilinear. It follows the classic S-curve. In the beginning of the S-curve, we are excited, we are learning, we are growing. That's great. Then you hit an inflection point. You've mastered whatever skills you think you need to learn. Now you're solving problems. You're actually doing good in the world. That is the steep part of the S-curve. But inevitably, we end up on the flat part of that S-curve, where we are no longer challenged. We grow complacent. We begin to complain about our inability to affect the status quo, the inability to have agency defined as being able to influence our circumstances. And it is exactly at this point, ladies and gentlemen, that it is quite important for you to recognize that it's time to get off that curve and jump onto a new one to continue to grow. Now, some of us might be smart enough and sensitive enough to sense that they are on the flat part of that S-curve and know it's time to jump off. I'm not that smart. I use the forcing function of time. By clockwork, every 5 years, I complete an S-curve. And so at every 5 years, no matter where I am in my career, I jump off and I start a new challenge. And that sequence of iterative S-curves has been tremendously successful for me to continue to expand my sphere of knowledge and thus my sphere of influence. I would like to illustrate this for you with my own career, which is admittedly very healthcare-centric. But as I said, I think this can be applied to any field, discipline, or practice. In my own career, I started off in my first 5 years by being in clinical practice. I learned about office-based medicine. I learned about hospital-based medicine. I learned about health systems, the fundamental building blocks of American healthcare today. I spent my next 5 years thinking in the pharmaceutical industry, where I learned about quality manufacturing systems, public policy, health economics and outcomes research, and sales and marketing. I spent the next 5 years thinking about domestic healthcare, building healthcare systems that can consistently deliver care at scale. I learned about things such as policies and procedures, information systems, training systems, infrastructure. I then spent 5 years in international, expanding what I learned in healthcare services to the international arena. And then I spent 5 years in venture capital and corporate development, where I found myself learning how to take an idea and create a company and bring products to market. I learned about how to fund a company, how to build a corporate governance structure, and how to actually create products that can actually improve the lives of patients. And today I find myself coming full circle from that afternoon in the ICU. I am tasked with building health systems that can improve the quality of life for patients, as well as the quality of life for healthcare practitioners who have dedicated their lives to taking care of them. Now, as I've said, my journey is very, very healthcare-centric. But let's take a few other examples. Let's imagine, if you will, a teacher who's created a great way of teaching an individual student. He, through a series of iterative plans, figures out a way to scale that from an individual student to a whole group of students, to a whole country's worth of students, and to the world. You might recognize that as Khan Academy. Let's think about a retailer who figures out a way to sell one thing really well and use that same platform to expand and expand and expand over multiple iterative plans to become the world's largest e-retailer. We, of course, know that as Amazon. I guess what I'm here to tell you is this. You should not find yourself complacent, stuck on that flat part of the S-curve, frustrated by your inability to grow your sphere of influence. Instead, I would advocate that you take the future in your own hands and move forward. And I believe that the way to do that starts with the power of 5. Intentional, iterative 5-year plans that allow you to continue to grow and learn and expand and eventually change the world. Thank you.